Hi everyone, welcome to today's live Q&A session in a series we've been running. We're really excited to have Esther from the UCAT team with us today to go through what the UCAT is with a short presentation and then give you the opportunity to ask questions that you might have. We know this is a really popular topic and a very popular session, so we'll be trying our best to answer your questions. If we don't have answers for you, we'll try our best, of course, to source them for you later and update you all. So that's me, Raj, from the Becoming a Doctor team, and I'll hand over to Esther now from UCAT. Thanks so much again, Esther, for joining us today.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a short presentation to run through just because I think that this might answer some of the questions that are probably going to be raised today. So hopefully I'll cover off some of them here. I'm going to try and keep it under 15 minutes, so I will go through it at quite some speed. But the presentation is available in its full form on our website. And anything we don't cover, you can speak to Raj and the Becoming a Doctor team and they can forward me any additional questions. So I'll go through it at some speed, but then that will give us more time for the Q&A afterwards. There we go. Okay, we're off. So basics that hopefully you will know if you've looked at the website. The standard UCAT is a 2-hour multiple choice computer-based test. So it's not a pen and paper test like the BMAT. You can only sit the test once each year. And it assesses a range of mental abilities. So it's not really got any curriculum content. It's more assessing skills and abilities that we feel are important in future doctors and dentists. And when I say we feel, this is ourselves and our consortium universities. So the test is mandatory for 30 UK universities. I've not listed them all here. They're all available on our website, so you can go and check those. But if you're thinking you need to sit the UCAT, make sure that you've checked the university and the course that you're looking at applying to. In fact, there's the units. So again, don't worry about taking that all in, but the full list is on the website. So depending on where you're thinking of applying to, you may need to sit the UCAT and the BMAT, depending on where you want to make your application. So that's something you need to decide yourselves. Obviously, this is quite an unusual year. In a standard year, we would open registration in May and then start testing in July. And that's all been delayed due to the current COVID pandemic. So we've kind of been waiting to see how things have worked out, when test centres could reopen, before we made some firm decisions. And now we feel fairly confident that we have a solution. This is why we've now sort of come back with the firm date. So registration opens tomorrow and booking. So from tomorrow, you'll be able to go online, create a UCAT web account, and book your test. So you'll be able to see available test slots and get your test booked. So we start testing on the 3rd of August. So that's only a month later than a standard year. So the test cycle is slightly shorter this year. It runs from the 3rd of August to the 1st of October. You can sit your test at any date in between there. Okay. All the key dates and fees are on the website, so I'm not going to dwell on that. What I would like to talk to you about is really the main changes and the important information you need to be aware of for 2020. So the biggest change this year is that you have a choice in how you sit the test or where you sit the test. So you can either sit it at a Pearson VUE test centre. This is the kind of place you would go to sit your driving theory test, and that's the same as in a standard year. The other option is you can sit it at home, and we call that the UCAT online. And anywhere you see reference to OnView, which you can see on the screen now, that's simply Pearson VUE's online proctoring system. So if you see OnView mentioned, that's all it means. It's just the system we use to run the online test. And it is the same test, so there is no difference at all between the UCAT sat at a test centre or online. What we've done this year to help candidates is we've published 2 candidate guides. So they're available on the UCAT 2020 page of our website, and they run through in great detail everything you need to know about each option. So how to go through booking your test, factors you need to consider in making that decision. The if you're thinking of sitting it online, the technical equipment and environment that you need to be able to sit the test. Or if you're sitting at a test centre, it will tell you more about what that experience will be like so that you can feel prepared. Lots of the questions I've had so far on social media and other channels are all answered in these guides. So please go and read those. You know, it's really important. And if I can take an extra moment on this slide, really, you need to think carefully yourself and reflect where you are best sitting your test. So we are expecting there to be good availability and good coverage across test centres worldwide. So not just in the UK, worldwide as well. So from tomorrow, you'll be able to go on the test centre locator, pop in your postcode and see where your nearest test centre is, what the test slots are like, and availability. If for any reason you don't want to sit in a test centre, then you have the option to sit the UCAT online. But again, there's factors you need to think about, such as, do you have the right technical equipment? So the basics is PC or laptop with camera and microphone access and a stable internet connection. You know, it's slightly more complicated than that, but that's kind of the main points. You also need to think about the environment that you're testing in. It sounds great taking a test at home, but I know from working from home for the last few months, it is pretty challenging. There's lots of distractions and lots of noise, and my internet signal has been pretty terrible on and off. So I would have some reservations at sitting the test at home, but it all comes down to your personal circumstances. So, you know, how many people are in your household? Will they give you 2 hours quiet time when nobody enters the room? Have you got a suitable room where you can be undisturbed? And yeah, is your internet signal okay? So things you need to think about. There's also other factors that come into play, like if you have access arrangements, then where you sit the test may be influenced by those. So please read candidate guides carefully. Just want to make you aware that there are bursaries to cover the full cost of the test. So if you're from a low-income household or you meet certain criteria, please look at our bursary scheme page. It gives you all the information on how to apply. Applications open tomorrow, and you can get the full test fee covered. I've already mentioned access arrangements briefly. So if you're entitled to extra time in school exams, school or college exams, then you can apply for extra time in the UCAT as well. There's a number of different test versions and a number of different accommodations. And I won't go through these here because they don't apply to everybody, but they're all covered on the access arrangements page of the website. And again, it's quite a simple online form. So you put the access arrangements that you get at school, you upload your evidence, and we should get back to you within 5 working days. So, and then you can go ahead and book your test. The test format itself is covered in great detail on the website. So it's 5 separately timed subtests. If you are quicker on one subtest, you don't get more time on the next one, that they are separately timed. And you can see there's quite a lot of questions to get through in a short space of time. So it's often the speed that's challenging in the UCAT. And again, I'm going to move through this quite quickly because all this information is on the website. So verbal reasoning, you'll be presented with a passage of text, and it will be about something, a topic you don't need to know anything about or need any prior knowledge of, and you'll be asked 4 questions associated with each passage. And kind of you can see the skills that might be critical to doctors when you look at this. So critical reasoning skills, being able to view large amounts of information and pull out pertinent facts, disregard irrelevant facts quite quickly. So sort of brush up on your speed reading skills with newspaper if you can. And think about how to answer that section. You know, some candidates say they read the passage and then answer the questions. Others say that they look at the questions first and then scan the passage for the correct answer. So you need to try both tactics and see what works. And I'm not even going to dwell on these because you won't be able to read them. It's so small. But that's an example of what a verbal reasoning question looks like. Okay. Decision making. So lots of different question types in this subtest. Venn diagrams, logical puzzles, syllogisms. You can have access to a whiteboard for this, so you might want to make notes in this section. Depends kind of whether you're a very visual learner or not. So you might jot things down or sketch things. If you've followed us on social media, you know this has been quite a contentious topic lately. In the standard year, candidates are provided with a whiteboard, like a small white erasable noteboard, and marker pen that you can use to make notes. When we're going through the doctoring software, that's kind of a big no-no, that they don't want candidates making notes. So pen and paper are not allowed in the UCAT online at home under any circumstances. So we introduced an online scratch pad, and this is kind of like an online notepad that you can call from within the test, and you can jot down notes there. You can't draw, but you can jot down numbers, quantitative reasoning, or jot down notes. So that is still available. That will be available regardless of whether you sit the test at home or at a test centre. But Pearson VUE have now confirmed that we can let candidates use whiteboards. So if you've got a whiteboard at home, or you can procure a whiteboard, whether you buy one that, you know, they're under a £5. Not that I'm saying that you should have to spend more tests, but if you really want one, you can beg, steal, or borrow one. And an erasable pen, you can use it if you want to. So I would have a go at some questions in the question bank and see whether you feel, you know, you really need to make notes during the test, whether you would work that way. Okay. And there's an example decision-making question. There are some partial marks within the test, not in all sections. So in decision-making, some questions have just one correct answer, so there's 1 point. Some questions, like the one shown, there are multiple answers, or multiple aspects to the answer. So if you get it partially correct, you can still pick up some marks. The quantitative reasoning, the best advice I can give you on this, if you're not currently studying A-level maths, would be to brush up on your GCSE maths. The level of maths is not that difficult. It assumes a familiarity with numbers, ratios, percentages, fractions, things like that. So they're the kind of things that I would brush up on from your GCSE maths. You are provided with an online calculator, and that is within the live test. You can pull that up. That's in the question banks and practice test too, so you can get familiar with it. That is if you sit the test at home or at a test centre. You're not allowed to use a handheld calculator. You have to use the online one. So please get familiar with using that. So and as well, one thing I always say, because it trips up candidates every year, make sure the num lock is on if you've got a keyboard, so that you can use that number pad. It makes it a lot quicker using the calculator. And again, you might want to use the whiteboard or the built-in scratch pad for that one as well. Again, there's an example of a quantitative reasoning question. Again, if I can just give you a quick tip, that's quite a small table that you see there, but there are often quite detailed graphs or tables or charts, and there might be a lot of erroneous information in there. So I would scan the question first, and then before you try and answer, do the answer before you look at the data that's given, because there might be a lot of information you can disregard. I'm on 13 minutes, so I'm going to carry on at this pace if that's okay. Abstract reasoning, this is one that kind of throws people to start with, simply because I think it's not used like anything you might be used to in school. So it's where you see sets of shapes and you're giving a test shape and asked to describe what's next in the sequence or which group it belongs to. This subtest is very speeded, so not all candidates get through all the questions. So it's really important to be disciplined with this section as you go through. If I just show an example, this is the kind of thing that it looks like. So there'll be 4 test shapes associated with that one question. So once you have spotted the rule, or the set of shapes, which set of shapes, you then will be answering the next 3 after that. So this really is one, I know people don't like hearing it, but the more practice questions you do, the easier these get. You start to spot the same patterns and rules, things like shape, symmetry, angle, shading. You will start to spot these very quickly. So you can make a mnemonic with the common patterns that you're used to seeing, and become a lot more adept at spotting those. Your sort of brain does train that way. And the final subtest is situational judgment. And again, assesses the key traits of integrity, perspective taking, communication, resilience, kind of ethics that we would like in future doctors and dentists. So SJTs are used quite widely now. You know, they're in foundation doctors, GPs, and lots of other recruitment areas as well. They're found to be useful. So you'll be given a scenario and asked a number of questions. It can be anywhere, I think, between 3 and 6 associated with each scenario. And you can be asked how important is a certain course of action or a certain consideration, or how appropriate is something to do. And this section is less speeded. Definitely. So preparing, it's a really tricky question to answer because everybody is different. High scoring candidates say between 25 and 30 hours. So we translate that to, you know, if you're not going mad and cramming, really that's sort of 4 to 6 weeks before your test, you know, starting at an hour a day and building up. When you start doing the practice tests, obviously they're 2 hours long. We recommend that you use the official materials on the UCAT website. Sorry, let me just go back a slide. So on the UCAT website, there's question banks with over 1,000 practice questions in. There's 4 fully timed practice tests now. There's some tutorials. So the question tutorial is one I really would recommend. 30 minutes of your time well spent. It goes through every single question type in the UCAT, and it gives you advice and strategies for how to approach and answer them. So that really is worthwhile having a look at. People always ask, what else should I use? Should I use any other websites, any other training courses, any other books? And the standard answer is, you know, we don't endorse anything else. We've got no control over the quality of their material or how they give predicted scores. And yeah, there's simply too many out there for us to try and sort of keep an eye on everything. So we would recommend you use the official materials on the UCAT website. Final tips, I think I've covered some of these. So brush up on your mental maths, speed reading, GCSE. You'll start spotting shapes in abstract reasoning. If you're struggling with the SJT, previous high scoring candidates said they found the GMC guidelines on good medical practice useful. So you could have a look at those, that you just Google them and they'll come up. But that kind of talks to you about levels of responsibility and sort of ethics and how they want future doctors to behave. So that might help you if you're kind of struggling and overthinking some of the SJT questions. Timing is the key. So use the practice test to improve your timing. Maybe take a time practice test, you know, a week or so into your revision, and then save the other 3 until you get a bit further on, and then you can see how you're improving. I would say that save the last one to the final week of your test so you can sort of get your confidence up. Don't leave any blanks. It is a multiple choice test, so you're just simply throwing away marks if you leave anything blank. So if you're struggling with a question, move on. Make an educated guess from the answers that you think are there, flag it and move on. So the flag and review function is available in all the subtests. You can use this to flag questions you don't get to or you're not sure about. And at the end of each section, if you do have a couple of minutes, you can go back and see the questions flagged. So if there are any you were really struggling on, you skipped, you can go back and deal with those at the end of each subtest if you have time. Okay. And then I'm not going to cover what's in here. So again, this is really in the candidate guides. I've tried to summarise it here but there's so much to cover. So if you're sitting at a test centre, there's things you need to be aware of. You know, really important to take your correct ID. You can't be late. Think about how you're going to get there. It's not like a school exam. There will be other people in the test room sitting different tests to you. There is obviously social distancing and lots of other health and safety measures at the test centres, the same as there are in schools and other places. So they will be in place, and you can look at details of those on the Pearson VUE website. There's a link to the Pearson VUE website on our in our test centre guide, simply to say, you know, try and have a look at that in the week before your test. So at the moment, the current government advice is, and the advice from Pearson VUE is, we recommend that you take and wear a face mask during your test. The reason I say keep an eye on that is because obviously the situation can change. So going forward through the test cycle, if lockdown eases or goes in the opposite direction, these sort of rules and measures could change. So it's important to just be aware of those. And if you have any problems during your test, you can attract the invigilator and they will help you. Taking the UCAT online, again, you really need to read carefully the online guide that will run through everything you need at home to be able to take the test and the environment. You can run a systems test. In fact, we really recommend that you do that. So you can run a systems test and it will check out your computer equipment, your camera, your microphone, your internet speed, and see if it thinks you're a suitable candidate for sitting UCAT online. So if there are any problems, that will throw it up and tell you what they are. Obviously, internet speed is a bit tricky because it does vary from day to day, but you could always do it again, on the morning of your test before you take the test. There's a longer checking process with UCAT online, and there is a slight complication as well that if you are under 18 and you're sitting the UCAT online, you need parental ID as well. So at the start of the check-in, when the proctor is there and they're checking you in, you'll also need a parent or guardian on hand to present themselves and present their ID. That's not a requirement for the test centre. This is to do with it's US online proctoring rules that we're having to abide by. So we can't get around that, I'm afraid. So if you're under 18, you just need to be aware of that. So they only need to be there right at the start of the test when you do the check-in, and then they leave and nobody else is allowed in the room for the 2 hours of your test. So you need to be somewhere where you cannot be disturbed for 2 hours. Yeah. Marking, I'm over 20 minutes now, so I'm going to cut this out. This is all on the website. Please have a look. All the marking and scores are on there. Previous test cycle scores are on there, so you can see how you've done straight away compared to previous candidates in other years, and it is pretty stable. You get your result within 24 hours, and you really need to look at your result to see where you want to apply to. Some universities have higher thresholds than others. Others don't have thresholds. They use score in different ways. Other universities don't interview Band 4 SJT candidates. They are all different. So it's really important when you know where you're thinking of applying to look at their individual university websites and see how they use the score. Say if you did get a Band 4 in SJT, it's not the end of the world. One door might close, but lots of others might still be open. So you just need to be a little bit strategic about where you apply to. Okay. And then we liaise with UCAS and we pass your results on to your universities on your behalf. You don't need to do anything else. And that's it. So other than say, follow us on social media. It is a strange year. We keep up to date on any changes as we go through this test cycle and important announcements. So I'll stop sharing my screen now and hopefully come back to everybody else.
Thanks so much for that, Esther.
Sorry.
That was a brilliant overview. And I guess the real kind of message there really is there's such a wealth of information on the UCAT website. A lot of the questions that people have been sending us, I think the answers can be found there. So I think it's definitely worth, for all candidates, making sure they have a good read of all the support that's available on the website. But also, through following UCAT on social media, UCAT do a brilliant job on social media, whether that's, through updates or through even sharing some questions and example questions. I know in the past you've done that and come up with answers as well. Is the app still up to date, Esther, as well for the UCAT?
Yes, yeah, we've not done a major refresh this year because there's been other higher priorities, but yeah, it's still there, and we tend to say the app's available as an extra source of questions, so it doesn't do anything too complicated. And because some of the questions are complex, we are restricted in there's only certain question types we can put on the app. We try to put there's some from every single subtest, but there are some that don't really translate well to the app. But they're an extra source of questions on the go if you need it.
Great. So I'm going to hand over to my colleagues soon, Tom, Alice and Connor, who are all medical students, keen to share their experiences and support you as well in your efforts. One of the questions that we've had is if we're able to share this afterwards. Are you happy, Esther, for us to share this?
Yes.
To keep it available?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right. So that's 50% of the questions answered. Okay, so I'll hand over to Connor, Alice and Tom now.
Hi everyone. Esther, thank you very much for that talk. It's quite interesting seeing how it's completely different this year with the online option available. Like that was so different for me. But yeah, thank you very much. So I'm Thomas. I'm a first year medical student down at Exeter. And then yeah, Alice.
Yeah, I'm Alice. I'll be entering into my final year at Newcastle. Connor?
And hi guys, I'm Connor. I'm a 4th year medical student at King's College London. Unfortunately, my camera is not behaving tonight, so I'm going to stay as this becoming a doctor symbol.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead with some of the questions that we've been sent that have been sent in to us previously. So if we start by saying, so what top tips would you give for the quantitative reasoning section? I've tried improving my speed when answering questions, however, I've had no success so far. I'd really appreciate some shortcuts or any useful practice that can be done aside from answering the questions from the question bank on the UCAT website.
Okay, so there are lots of different question types within the quantitative reasoning section. I would say improve your mental maths. You know, if the calculator is there for you, but if you can decrease your reliance on it, you might speed up. If you're really struggling with timing. Be disciplined with yourself, you know, so work out how many questions there are in the subtest, how long does that allow you per question, and when you're doing your practice, even if you're just working through the question banks untimed, you know, stop. If you've not got to the answer, stop, make a best guess, an educated best guess. You know, there might be a couple of answers that you could rule out as complete outliers, and then select the best answer from the ones that are left and move on. So be disciplined. There are some different question types. You know, if somebody mentioned this with the decision making as well, you know which ones you find easier to answer. If there's some question types that you really struggle with, I've had students say that they flag them and they leave them right to the end, and then they work through the ones they know they're better at, they're quicker at, the shorter questions maybe, pick up those marks straight away, and then go back in the review screen and then go back to the more challenging questions at the end. You can try those tactics. You know, I'm not saying what will work for you, but that's some different options you could try.
The next question they've got is a two-part one. Do we actually get partial marks for the SJT? And if so, how many per one partially correct?
So yes, yes you do. So it's quite complex. The scoring and marking, we have raw scores which are then converted to scale scores, so it's very complex to explain the actual scoring, but yeah. So within the SJT, say if the answer was something was appropriate, not ideal, and you put a very appropriate thing to do, you would still pick up a partial mark on that one. So don't get too bogged down with trying to understand all the marking. I would say you can get a bit people try and be a little bit too strategic about it. I think it's best just to try and answer all the questions as accurate as you can.
Great. We've had quite a lot of questions this evening, Esther, about people worrying about the conditions of their house and whether it will be appropriate for them sitting at home. So people have asked whether if the only room in their house they will be able to sit the exam in has shelves or has cupboards, is this going to be an issue? Or people who live in a studio flat, are they going to be able to sit the exam in that environment? Are you able to give any answers to that?
Sure. So if I look like I'm looking at another screen, because I've got two screens in front of me. So yeah, the guidance that's in the online guide is the room must be walled, have a closed door, and be free from disruptions. No one else can be present or enter the room while you're testing. You will be asked by the greeter or the proctor, so you will have to show them the room that you're in, and they take photos of your work area, making sure there's no paperwork or anything on there. So the desk that you're working on should be clean. Obviously, it might not be a big space, but you should no notes, books, bookshelves, any paperwork should be within arm's reach, basically. So you just need to be able to show that you can't reach out and grab something. So can you? I've seen one that says if you live alone in a studio flat, can you take it? Yes. So yeah. They can assess that. So when you do, when you first log on with the proctor, they will assess that and let you know if there's a problem. So if there was a problem at check-in, they may say to you, look, it's not suitable and you need to reschedule your test. And you could do that. You wouldn't be charged for that. So, you know, if they really say, look, this isn't an appropriate space, What you need to be sure, obviously, if it isn't in a separate room, that you know that nobody else is going to be disturbing you. So yeah, no additional monitors, computers are allowed in there, things like that. So you do have to sort of think carefully about your workspace.
Great, thank you very much. I think that answers a lot of different questions, a lot of worries for people.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question that we've got that's come in is talking about the whiteboards that you can use. So please could you ask the UCAT team what size whiteboard and how thick the pen will be if we do the test at the centre, e.g. Watford Test Centre. Also, if we have previously done our driver's theory test at Pearson, should we log into the UCAT test using the same account or make a new one? It's a bit of a difficult one.
Okay, that's interesting. I've not been asked that before. So the answer to the first one is I have no idea. So it will be an appropriately sized whiteboard. I would imagine roughly A4 sized, and I've no idea how it's an appropriate marker pen, and I would guess it would be suitable for the size of the whiteboard. You know, we do about 30,000 tests a year, and we don't really get any complaints about the size of the whiteboard or the marker pen. So if you're practicing at home, practice with a felt tip and a piece of paper, that's fine. But for the live test just viewer, it will be slightly different. If you run out of room on your whiteboard or your pen runs out, you can put your hand up for the invigilator and they will come and bring you another one. If you're sitting the UCAT online at home and you want to use a whiteboard, there are very, very strict requirements about what they can and cannot look like. So please go onto the website and look at the practice tips page, because there's a lot of information about the whiteboards there. And you know, we're tied by these rules basically. So if you want to use that, just be careful. And the second part of the question, if you've previously done driver's theory test, no, you would need to create a new account. So even though you've done testing with Pearson VUE before, you need a UCAT account, and that gives you a UCAT ID, like a candidate ID number that's unique to the test. So you would need to create a new account. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for that answer. That was really good.
I think from memory, when I did the UCAT, the whiteboard marker was like a felt tip, like you said, it was quite thin, and the whiteboard was about an A4 sheet. But that was about 4 years ago. But I assume they're about the same.
Yeah.
The next question is, someone asked, I've recently sat the GAMSAT, whereby you could sit the exam in the evening as some proctors were supervising from all over the world. Will this be the same for UCAT online? As in, can we opt for a testing slot at 5 p.m, 6 p.m, 7 p.m, BST?
Yes. That is one of the attractions of online exam, that there are proctors all over the world, and there will be test slots at different times. So over the weekends and earlier in the morning and later in the evening, there will be test slots. So from tomorrow, when you can start looking at availability of slots, you'll be able to see what's available. But yeah, I would expect it to be a much longer working day. And in fact, even in the test centres, you know, we're having to deal with capacity is restricted because of social distancing measures that are in place. So before, say, if we might have been able to get 15 candidates in a room for a test centre, we might only now be able to get 6 or 7 in. So to combat this, the test centres are opening later in the evenings, they're opening weekends, and in some cases opening on days in the week that they were previously closed. So Pearson VUE are trying to sort of mitigate the effects on capacity in that way as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a bit of a plus for people who maybe are working, or maybe have some kind of extra constraints because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes.
Availability, definitely. And I think that covers very many questions. We've had some questions about people worried about taking in Singapore, and worrying whether they'll be able to choose a time that's correct for them. But there's going to be dozens of time slots throughout the day. Is that correct? And
I believe so. So at the moment, I can't see the test slots either. So from when registration goes live at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, you'll be able to go online and look at test slot availability. Obviously, in some of the test centres, that might change as we go through the cycle. At the moment, Pearson are predicting, you know, really good coverage, and that is worldwide. But that could change. So This year, we really are trying to encourage candidates to sit the test earlier while we are expecting good coverage, because simply, the future is so uncertain at the moment in terms of, if the global situation changes. But yeah, if you are in Singapore and you're struggling to find any UCAT online test slots, then get in touch with us at the UCAT office and we can have a look into that for you.
Thank you. And just to check, do you already know for a fact that there is good test centre availability, at least for the first part of the test cycle, at least for maybe the first couple of weeks?
Yes, that's what we're being told. So from August, when we open, and obviously the Pearson VUE test centres are open now. There are other tests, not the UCAT, going on already. So yeah, they are currently open. It's so difficult. At the moment, this is what we're saying. So please test early while there is good coverage. So while you've still got the choice to sit at a test centre or online at home, if the global situation changes, that choice might be severely restricted for some candidates, depending on where they live. We're seeing at the moment, we're based in Nottingham, the UCAT team, and near us in Leicester has gone back into lockdown today. So things can change, the situation can change. So that is one advantage to the test not being just on one day. It is over quite a long period. So even if a certain area might be in lockdown and test slots are restricted, then a month down the line, when you get to September, that might be released again and the test centres will be open. So we're quite fortunate that we run over a substantial period of time. So candidates will have the opportunity and hopefully their choice of how to test.
Okay, so moving over to some of the live comments that have been sent in for us. So the first being, how do you deal with time management during the UCAT test?
Well, that's quite a broad one. So yeah, I think I've said some of it already. So be disciplined, work out your timings per question. A lot of candidates say they do that. So even if they're just sat doing an hour's revision in one of the question banks, they would still time themselves on a stopwatch or on the phone and try and stick to it and make themselves move on if they've not finished a question. So I would be very disciplined with yourself, and again, use the flag and review function. It's there for a reason. So try and be a little bit strategic so that you're not throwing away marks.
Just to cover a bit in case anyone's missed it before, how would you go about accessing or applying for extra time for the test?
Okay, so on the access arrangements page of the website, there's full details of all the different types of accommodations we can offer and the different test variants. The most common of those is the UCAT Send, so that's 25% extra test time. So if you're currently receiving extra time at school or college, and then you can, or if you're an adult learner and you've got requirements, we just need you to fill in a really simple online application form. So you say what your requirements are, you will upload your evidence, and we would get back to you. So some versions of the UCAT Send, you can actually book that version of the test yourself, because we have quite a large number of candidates did that variation. So you could book that yourself through your online Pearson VUE account. If it's one of the other more lengthy versions or more complex versions of the test, then you need prior approval before you can then book that through our customer services team. So some are a little bit more complicated, but they're very, very small numbers. But yeah, if you've got any concerns, just drop us an email. I was going to say something else and that's gone out my head. Oh, that was it. Yeah, I think I mentioned you might need rest breaks for certain reasons, or access to medical equipment, and how we allow that can vary depending on where you choose to sit your test. So might be certain sort of rules for if you want those items or need those breaks in a test centre, and different rules for if you sit it at home. So if you need rest breaks, you can do the test at home, but you're still not allowed to leave the room. So you could take a rest break at your desk, have a stretch, rest your eyes, etc. But you can't leave the room, you can't go to the toilet or anything like that. So for those candidates, we sort of are steering them more towards test centres, because it's just more set up for it. There are live members of staff there who they've already checked you, your belongings are in a locker, they know what else is in the building. So in your breaks, you can go to the bathroom or stretch your legs or do whatever else you need to do because you are observed. Whereas at home, obviously, that's more difficult to control. We can't have candidates leaving the room and then coming back into an exam. It just wouldn't work. So just have a think about those. If you have got access arrangements, just read up on that within the 2 candidate guides.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. We've got a very specific question here of if a candidate is at a test centre, will they be able to have a bottle of water or a cup of water?
No, at the test centre you can't, and I think it's to protect the equipment really. So it's to stop people knocking drinks over onto the equipment. So no, you're not allowed. So for the 2 hours, you'd need to have a good drink beforehand. Make sure you're hydrated. You've had a good breakfast or lunch whenever you're taking a test. But no, for the duration, you're not allowed unless there is a medical reason you need that. So if you need it for any medical reason, of course you can apply for that, and that would be granted. I believe at home.
Yeah, thank you.
At home you can. Sorry, yeah. At home you can have a glass of water if it's in a clear glass. Obviously, then you are risking your own equipment at home.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next question we've touched on a bit beforehand, but just in case anyone's missed it, what are the best resources to use for preparation?
Yeah, the official practice materials on the UCAT website. So I would start with there's a preparation plan video, and that kind of gives you a run through of the basics of timings, and it signposts you to all the other resources that are available and suggests maybe an order that you might use them in. It's like a 3-minute video, but that's quite a handy place to start. Then the tutorials I would go on to next, and then the question banks and the practice tests. There's a wealth of other information out there, and some of these courses might be very good. We're not sort of saying that they're not, and I've seen some very good reviews, but they do cost candidates quite a lot of money. So our aim at UCAT is that we provide enough materials for free on our website so that no candidates have to pay for any preparation materials. And we sort of firmly believe in that ethos. So we do more and more of that each year. So we've added a 4th practice test this year. So we would steer you to the official materials. If you get through all of the questions in our question banks and the app and the practice test and everywhere else, and you need more questions, then sure, look elsewhere. Maybe you can get secondhand books. Maybe you can go on the student room and get some peer advice. A lot of these commercial companies often offer so many questions free of charge on their websites before they then start charging you. So there might be the ways that you can get hold of extra practice questions as well. So, but use the official materials first.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that answer. That was really thorough and good.
I would agree. I think I found the official materials the most useful because it was the most realistic and you can get your timings right using them. One of the questions someone asked was, how long after doing a test will we get the results?
Okay, so that does depend on how you sit it. So if you're at a test centre, you get them straight away. You'll be given a printed copy of your score report as you leave the test centre. Within 24 hours, your scores are also uploaded to your UCAT account, your Pearson VUE web account. So you'll be able to see them there as well. Obviously, if you sit it at home, we haven't got facility to print anything out. So you would need to wait those, but within 24 hours, it will be on your web account. So everybody, regardless of how they sit the test, will have their scores within 24 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have some questions from people regarding the use of the number pad, and I know people really like to use the number pad in the testing centres. People seem to think that really speeds up especially their quantitative reasoning section. Will people be able to use kind of an add-on number pad at home if their laptop or their current keyboard doesn't have one?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So again, this is covered in the candidate guide. There are some things you are and aren't allowed. So you're not allowed a second monitor attached to your PC or laptop. So just be aware of that. That will be detected. But you can use a plug-in mouse or a wireless mouse, so or a keyboard or number pad. That is permitted. And in fact, I would probably recommend that. So it depends what you've got at home, or you might be really used to using a laptop and have done all your preparation, your practice on your laptop, and you're pretty quick and you're pretty confident, you need to sort of see how you're revising. I'm working from home and I'm using a laptop and I'm hating it. So I've got into work and I've brought my mouse and my keyboard home and plugged them in, and I'm much quicker. So especially, like you say, the number pad on the keyboard, which is not available on a standard laptop. I think that does speed up using the calculator, especially in quantitative reasoning. So if you didn't have that, you can still do the subtest. You would need to use the mouse to click on the numbers to operate the calculator, or the top row of numbers at the top of your laptop keyboard. But if you can get hold of one, again, see if you can borrow one from a friend, borrow one from school. If they know you're doing the test, I think most schools will be happy to lend you this kind of equipment. So if you can borrow one from a friend, or if you can afford to purchase one, again, I looked at some sets where you could get a keyboard and a mouse for about 10 quid. So that they're not too cost prohibitive, but it just depends how you're used to practicing and what you're used to using, but they are allowed.
Great. I think we're running into our last 10 minutes now of this stream, so I think let's try and do some kind of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Tom, do you want to start us off on?
So the first one is, what happens if my Wi-Fi stops working when carrying out the test at home?
Good question. So yes, that can happen, and if it was me, that would happen. It's not the end of the world. So your test would freeze at the point where the internet went down, and the proctor would try to resume your test. And if your internet was back up, the test would resume from the point where it stopped, and you wouldn't have lost any test time. So if that does happen, it doesn't mean that you're automatically booted out of your test. They will try and restart it for you. That said, if that happens continuously, or or your internet doesn't come back on, you can't leave the room to go and check the router's plugged in, or you can't do that. So I would really that's why it's important to do the systems check to see if your internet is strong enough. My other tip would be, boot everybody else out the house if you can. And I know that's not always practical, but when I'm doing this kind of event, I ask my kids and my husband to go for a long walk, go to the park, go out, or at least get off all other devices so that I can have the bandwidth. So things like that can really make a big improvement. Go and turn everything else off, the Wi-Fi off, to sort of make sure nobody else is sapping it. So it's not the end of the world if it does happen, but yeah, think about that. And if your internet is really unstable and you're really worrying about that, I would test in a test center.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think this question is meant to say, can you apply for a bursary after you've already booked the test?
Yeah, so again, I'll keep the answer quick. Yeah, you can do either. So you can apply for your bursary first, wait for us to turn it around, and you'll be issued with a bursary voucher, and then you can book your test like that, so you don't have to pay. We usually turn them around. It says 5 working days, but we're usually a lot quicker than that. It's usually within a couple of days. If you don't feel like you can wait and you're desperate to book your test now and you don't want to wait, book it, and you can then apply to Pearson VUE for a refund.
Thank you. We've had quite a few people still with a lot of questions about the whiteboard. And one such question was whether someone could try and save time by having multiple whiteboards.
Oh gosh, I don't want to answer that because I don't actually know the answer. So have a look on our website. It might be covered somewhere in our guides. If it's not, ping us an email and I will find out for you. We've not been asked that one. So if you're at the test centre, you can request new whiteboards. You don't have to erase them yourself. You just put your hand up for a new one. If you're at home, I'm assuming you can use your eraser and you wipe it clean. And again, at the end of the test, you will be asked to wipe it clean by the proctor. You've got to show that you've not kept any notes, you've not written down questions, that you're taking out the exam after. But in terms of multiple whiteboards, I'm not sure. Yeah, let me come back to you on that one. Let's hold that question and I will find out.
Great, thank you.
So the next question is, where can we find practice tests?
So they are on the practice tests and resources page of the UCAT website. So there's all the preparation materials on there. So that's where you'll find the question banks and the practice tests there. And you can choose to sit the there's a few different versions. So there's 4 practice tests. Each one you can choose to sit it as the standard test, the UCAT Sen, if that's the version of the test you're planning to sit, and you can choose to sit them timed or untimed. So those options are all available on there.
In the practice tests, the calculator can come up in different internet tabs, so they have to switch between them. Will this happen in a real test?
That's a good question. Yeah, there is a very slight difference between the, I'm just trying to call it up so I can remind myself. There's a very slight difference between how the calculator works within the practice test and the live test. So yeah, so to call the calculator, you click up on the icon at the top of the page. The calculator in the live test, the calculator closes when you click away from it or move to another question. It can be recalled by clicking on the icon again. Current calculations are retained until you move to the next question. Due to limitations with the browser on the practice test, oh no, sorry, this functionality is not replicated in the practice test. Yeah. Oh, hang on, the clearing the no, sorry, that functionality is only clearing the calculator that works slightly differently between the practice test and the live test. So go to the practice test page of the website, and there's practice tips on there as a separate tab. Have a look at those. That gives you loads of detail about how to clear the calculator. There's certain things you might need to know with decimal numbers. That sort of runs through all that so that you can be aware of that and practice like that when you're doing the practice test. So yeah, there's a lot of data here for me to read, but yeah, have a look and be familiar. But that is a good question, and it is something to be aware of.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Can we just ask, Esther, are you okay just to continue a few minutes longer after 7? We've just got quite a few more questions to get through.
Yeah, that's okay. I've got kids in the background, but they are being very well behaved at the moment. So let's carry on while we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've still got a few people asking about some kind of technical issues or technical questions surrounding taking the test at home. We can probably run through a couple of them quite quickly. Will candidates be able to be wearing headphones while sitting the exam at home?
No, I asked that question and the answer is no, you're not. You'll be offered earplugs or noise reduction headphones at the test centre if you request them, but you can't wear them at home for test security. So if you are in a noisy household, take the test at a test centre. Really.
Great. And if someone is using a laptop or a computer with a touchscreen functionality, will they be able to use the touchscreen functionality during the test?
No, that's not compatible with the test software. So yeah, touch screens are a no.
Okay, no. But the laptop itself would they have to use a completely different computer?
I guess if they've got a plug-in keyboard and mouse, they may, they should still be able to use it. But again, you'd need to run the systems check to see if it ran okay on that particular operating system. So there are some things like Linux-based operating systems the test is not compatible with. So if you're in any doubt, get your setup how you think you would use it during the test and run the systems check, and that will tell you whether your equipment meets the spec or not.
Yeah, great, thank you. I think that seems to be a very common theme, that people need to be running that test, and that will probably answer almost all of the questions they have.
Yeah, to me that's a must. They will ask you to do that on the morning of your test. So when you do your online checking, you're asked to do that there and then as well, right before you start. But for me, that's kind of a little bit late by that point. You should have really done that up front. So just to check if there are any issues, because it might be something that you could troubleshoot or quite easily remedy if you really want to sit the test at home.
Okay, so our next question: if you book a test centre and the centre has to shut because of coronavirus, what would then happen?
Okay, yeah, so I mean that could happen. If that was the case, we would contact you. So our customer services team would contact you to let you know what that happens. And I guess then you'd have some options. They could reschedule your test to the UCAT online at home if you had the equipment to do it, or they could reschedule you to a later test date later in the cycle. And again, this is really why we're encouraging candidates to test as early in the cycle as you can. You still need to prepare, so give yourself adequate time to prepare, but it's really important to sit early in the cycle. And again, for me, if I was going back to school or college in September, I'd want to have this test out of the way before I went back to school or college as well. So you're not having to focus on too many things at once. So sort of please listen to that advice and test earlier in the cycle where you can.
Yeah, it's out of everybody's control, so try and just get it done ASAP if you can.
Yeah. And then relax. Yeah.
If I've taken a UCAT before, can I book using the same Pearson VUE account?
Yes, yeah, that's a good question, and yes, you should. So yeah, if you can still remember your login, yes, log in using the same account and just book your new test. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think lots of people have a similar question. And just to reiterate, Esther's already said that if you already have a Pearson VUE account, but it wasn't for the UCAT, then you're going to need to create a new UCAT exam. Yeah. Just some more kind of technical questions that people have had. People keep asking very specific questions, and I would guess that your answer is going to be the same as the others, that people should run the test with all of the equipment they're using. Yeah,
you can use a plug-in webcam. That's okay. So if there's not one built into your screen, you can use a plug-in webcam. Yeah, but again, then run the systems check and make sure it's all working okay.
Is the test compatible with Mac, iOS, and Apple iMac?
Yes, it is. Let me just double check. Again, I'm having to consult the online guide because obviously the system requirements are quite detailed. But yes, it is system requirements. So yeah, Windows 10, Windows 8.1, or Mac. Yeah. It's just not compatible with Linux or Unix-based operating systems. Yeah.
When would you recommend taking the UCAT? Is it better to get it done as soon as possible or give yourself more time to revise by doing it in September?
I would say as early as possible. See how your vision's going. I mean, we do say sort of 4 to 6 weeks. So you guys are already on the ball. You know about the test. Hopefully you've had a quick look at the website. There's not a lot of other distractions going on at the minute in terms of being able to go out and socialize and do other things. So, you know, kind of use that to your advantage and really crack on with your revision. And I would really recommend sitting it earlier in the test cycle for lots of the reasons I've already talked about. But yeah, if you really don't feel prepared, you know, if you get round to your test date and you are really, really not feeling prepared, then you can reschedule. That is an option. But what we really want to discourage candidates from doing is just rescheduling. You know, I don't feel up to it. I'll do it in a couple of days. I'll do it next week. You know, capacity is high. There's a lot of people taking the test this year. We're expecting numbers to be high, and capacity is affected in the test centres and the online and online. Please be considerate of other candidates and don't keep scheduling your test just kind of on a whim. Every time somebody does that, often it's so short notice that test slot then can't be used by another candidate. So you're really taking away a test in the system that somebody else could have used and could have booked into. So please really think carefully before you do reschedule your test.
Thank you. We've had a few questions again about the bursary, and just to check, students applying for a bursary, will that delay their ability to book a test, or will they be able to book a test and apply for the bursary afterwards?
Yeah, you can do that. Yes, so you can book and apply for the bursary afterwards. So we would approve your bursary, send you your voucher code. You would have already paid for your test, and then you just contact Pearson VUE customer services, because at the UCAT office we don't actually deal with any of the finance side of it. Customer services would refund you your test fee. The bursary as well, just while I'm thinking about it, if you are a WP candidate, one in participation, or you're on any schemes, or you meet the bursary criteria, there are certain universities that offer sort of widening access programs, and one of the factors they used for getting onto that scheme is the UCAT bursary. So, you know, if you are eligible, it's to your advantage to use it. So don't worry about we do tell universities which candidates have bursaries, but that's for a good thing. That's so that they can see that you are open for those programmes.
Thank you.
We're coming to the end of our questions, but we've got another one talking about PPE. So as a mask is uncomfortable, if we're 2 meters apart from other candidates, are we allowed to not wear one?
Yeah, I don't think it's mandatory. So the wording on the Pearson VUE website for UK test centres at the moment is we strongly recommend that you take and wear a face mask. So it doesn't say that you will be denied access if you don't. I would err on the side of caution and take one with me. But if you're in any doubts, check that guidance. As I said, it could change, so that they're trying to go in line with current government recommendations and guidelines. Check the guidance the week before you go to your test centre, and you could always phone your test centre. And, if you say, I really don't want to wear one, if it's 2 meters apart, am I permitted? And they will give you clearer guidance on that. So at the moment, the wording is strongly recommended. Sorry, I feel like I've been a bit evasive there, but it's a tricky one because it could change.
And I think this will be one of our last questions. Should we use GMC resources for situational judgment?
Yeah, well, I mean, our highest ever scoring candidate, and we interviewed her, a girl called Isabel, who got a brilliant best ever top score, and she sort of said she used those quite heavily. So she did read those GMC guidelines, and she said she found them really useful for the SJT. Again, the SJT is a funny one. Some people find it their easier subtest, others find it the opposite. So see if you're struggling. If you really are struggling and you're getting band 3s or 4s, consistently not getting at the right answer, make sure you use the answer rationales that are in the practice test and the question bank. So if you do get any questions wrong, read the rationales and see why you got them wrong. Try and understand that first. But if you're struggling, other candidates have told us they found those really useful.
Thank you so much for your time, Esther. I think we've got one more question, and then we'll wrap it up and we'll let you go. This question is regarding the home test option.
Yeah.
And we've got someone wanting to know how the invigilator is going to be, or how Pearson VUE are going to be monitoring whether students and candidates are using handheld calculators at home.
It's funny, this has been, when we sort of first announced the online test, this is one of the first questions we had through. So we've actually put this in our FAQ page of our website, because a few candidates did seem sort of quite annoyed about it. But, if I'm doing the test at a test centre and I've got to use the online calculator, what about everybody else at home? They can just use their own or use the scientific one. They can't. So there is online proctoring. So the online proctoring software is quite sophisticated. So we use artificial intelligence combined with live proctors who are trained to spot this sort of thing. So the whole time you're taking the test, your eyes will be on the screen, as you're answering the questions. Now with permitted whiteboards, they may scan down shortly in decision making or quantitative reasoning to make notes, but not every question. They will be able to spot if you are using a handheld calculator. They're trained for that. If at any point they suspect that a candidate is doing that, your test will be stopped. Okay, that's what the online proctors will do. So they are not permitted, and if candidates are found to be doing that, it will be picked up and the test will be terminated. And you don't really need a scientific, just to add to that, you don't really need a scientific calculator. The level of maths is not that complex. The online calculator is just a case of getting used to using it. So use it in the practice test, use it when you're doing the question banks, and it will soon become second nature.
Great, thank you so much. Oh yeah, go on, Tom. You can.
Yeah, sorry, we've got one last question, I think, about someone moving to Spain, and they've basically got an open plan house, and they're wondering whether they'll be allowed to take the test at home.
Oh, crikey. So again, I would go and look at the UCAT online candidate guides and get some detailed guidance on that. So it does describe the kind of room in terms of walls and doors. So I'm going to have to sort of say, go and look at the online guide for that one and see what the requirements say. I think it says that it needs to be a shut door, but let me just double check. The room must be walled and have a closed door. Well, I guess there are walls and doors in every room. So, yeah, I think I would say you would be a little bit on dangerous ground there. I would say go and take it in your bedroom rather than in an open plan space, you know, if you can. So I think it's just making sure there are no other people who can just come in and out of the room. And if it's an open plan room, then somebody could do that. They could walk in from another room. So the proctor would tell you if at online checking they really weren't happy with what they're seeing, they would tell you at that point, and you would need to reschedule your place, your test, or go to a different location. So that would be my best advice. Read the guidance carefully. Think about if there is another space you can test in that is a more appropriate room, and try and do that. Okay.
Great. Thanks so much for that rapid fire, everyone. Thanks for all your insightful questions, and thanks to Esther for answering those questions amazingly. The Oracle.
Kept me on my toes.
Please do visit the UCAT website, which has a wealth of information, as Esther's already mentioned. Thank you to Alice, Tom, and Connor for helping moderate that and sharing their reflections as well of doing the exam. We're making this available for you to watch as well, and please do check out all the resources that we mentioned during this webinar regarding optimizing your performance and the operational side of doing the test. So thank you so much again to Esther for taking your time out this evening to join us. Do you have any final words for the candidates, Esther?
Really just sort of please read the information on the website, reflect on where you are best sitting your test. When you've read all the information, you feel fully informed, and please listen to the advice about getting on with your revision and sitting the test earlier in the cycle if you can this year. I think that really is important. And good luck.
Great. Thanks so much again, everyone. Good luck. And we'll see you soon at another Q&A or another webinar. Thank you so much again to Esther, the UCAT team, and to Alice, Tom, and Connor for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Esther.